Good afternoon, thanks for watching Rundlii Gaming. We're going to be doing something a little bit different on this particular video. We're just kind of revisiting a couple of the games that we've already done. This is kind of my top four list of games that I kind of look back at and have enjoyed over the last couple of months, as far as various new games that haven't come out yet, but are still currently in the works of coming out. So these were pretty much all like early release games. That haven't been released. So a lot of times it's usually just demos and things to try out before they actually finish the product. So with that, a lot of things could very much change by the time they get released. So it's really just a comparison between the ones that I feel had a lot of potential up to this point. Now that being said, this particular list is not um, in order as far as what I enjoyed more than others, but rather I think they each have their own kind of section of what makes them great. So they're all kind of unique in their own particular way. So I wouldn't say like number one is better than number two or three or four. But rather, I think I kind of look back fondly at each of these for very different reasons. And a lot of times it's usually just the different play styles with it and how the game itself does run with it. Now, this particular game here was Starfall. And I think what kind of why I enjoyed this particular one is it does add um, a few things to the game itself. So, for example, the game itself is kind of a blend of city building and then kind of like resource management mixed in with like an RPG. So, like in this particular case, it's kind of the early part of the game. You kind of have a day phase and a night phase. So you have a certain amount of time per day in order to kind of pull the resources you need. That also gives you a little bit of time to go hunting and stuff like that to kind of level up your hero. And as your hero gets stronger, they get new special abilities and things of that sort. And you kind of have to do a little bit of both because your hero could also go out there and help you with getting resources. So you can go out there and chop trees, you can go out there and get stone. Um, so there's a lot of things he's able to do as well. Um, so you can kind of either make them stronger by going and fighting stuff, which you kind of have to do as well, or you can help kind of with your economy to make it more useful on that front as well. And as you can see with the game itself, what eventually does end up happening is it becomes nighttime like this. And with that, effectively what's going to start to happen is the undead will start to rise up, and then you'll kind of get attacked by sort of random monsters. And depending on the day or night that you're on, so like day one, it's going to be a little bit weaker than say like if it's day 6 or 7 or 8. So you kind of have to continue to expand your economy and build out your military, because if you do not, the undead will overrun you at some point. Now, being that this is a demo, on day 6, it's basically set up to where almost no matter what, they're going to overrun you just because of the sheer number of monsters that attack and just the amount of health and damage you need to do to make that happen. So in this case, in this particular one, I didn't have much of a military yet because it does take a little bit of time to scale into that. So you can get a lot of like melee fighters or archers or other things like that to kind of assist you with the defense as well. But if you don't have that strong economy to go with it, um, it can certainly negatively impact you later as well. So it is a fun blend of kind of like your RPG, because your character's leveling up, getting stronger. You have kind of your resource management, you have your city building. It's all kind of bundled in together. And as I kind of watched the specific designer of the game, talking about the game itself, and I do see this one having a lot of potential. So it will be interesting to see where this one goes when it does finally get released. Because I know, like everybody on this list, I do feel that they all are getting quite a few updates, and I suspect this one will get quite a few in the works as well. But that is the game of Darfall. So the next game on the list itself will be the game Galaxy Highways. And so this one's kind of more going to be like a game where you're traveling through space, and you kind of customize your ship to some degree, and you can also upgrade it and get certain benefits to it. And then as you are going through the game itself, you will get into these kind of fights and skirmishes like what you're seeing now. And it kind of brings you into these little mini, um, boss fights in this little area. So it kind of becomes its own little, battle. And with that, basically, you have to take whatever kind of build you're running with your specific vehicle on here. And depending on what kind of upgrades you give it and what kind of special abilities you give it, will kind of dictate a little bit more of what kind of play style your specific fighter will have on it. And this is kind of where you do kind of get like a sort of a tech tree. And with that tech tree, you can unlock different things. Your special being kind of like your secondary weapon, which at the time on this one, I think it was the time bomb, which basically you drop it and then it'll blow up within a few moments. There were things like proximity mines, you could throw down some turrets, and then the secondary is kind of like the other weapon that you use. And so it kind of offers a bit of customization. So you don't necessarily need to run like a specific ship. That ship has a very specific, setup that it uses. You can basically go in and customize specific weapons that you want to use, and kind of what sort of special weapons that you would like to run with it. And that's where I think this game shines, though, is a lot of these. So a lot of these encounters that you run into can be very unique bosses. Like this one basically ran a bunch of lasers. And you kind of had to destroy all the outside ones in order to go in to fight the center boss. So some of the boss fights that you would encounter are to be much more intricate like that. And it does add a bit more kind of strategizing of how you want to go through and destroy, the specific boss on here. And also, a lot of times these boards will actually have multiple things you have to get done. So, and sometimes some of them are time sensitive. So sometimes it will be kind of a matter of planning. Should I, go and defeat this boss first because it gives me a bonus, or should I do this one because maybe this one might be easier at the moment? A lot of times these will also have things like gates where you can kind of jump around. So I think there would be a pretty good amount of trying to optimize runs to figure out what would be best for completing certain levels. So if there ends up being like high scores and stuff, I could see that being a very competitive side of it as well. But yeah, that is a game of Galaxy Highways. Then the third game on this list is actually going to be the game called Final Factory, and it kind of plays in the same vein as something like Factorio, if you guys have played that, or Dyson Sphere. I believe also has a very similar set of mechanics to it, where the goal of the game itself is to basically optimize your own kind of like factory. Now, in the case of my runs here, this is probably not the best demonstration for how the factories would look if you do actually look at some of the more veteran players of the game, or those that are working on it, you would definitely see a much uh, more beautiful version of it. But this one is heavily modified, where I don't necessarily have to follow the stability rules quite as much, and that basically means I can construct it into one big thing, whereas generally the game itself prefers more kind of smaller bases that kind of all work together, and at that point you can basically move resources between them. Um, but those that kind of like any kind of automation games where you're basically trying to uh, set up resources going to another destination, then those destinations will then process those into something else. A lot of times you could then use those things that it produces to make something else. And it's kind of going through like a list of different things that you would need to build out for that. In my case, out of the different games on this list, this is probably the one I've clocked the most time on, just because the demo itself kind of allows a little bit more ability to play through quite a bit more stuff on it. Because I think the tutorial itself probably takes, you could probably play it for a good 5 to 6 hours before you finish out all the research on it. And now that said, the tutorial itself, you could probably get through in about 30 minutes to an hour, but you can still, there's still quite a bit of play on the demo itself before you can get to that point as well. So Final Factory, there's a lot of things you can do with it, and that's what I think what makes it fun. If it is your style of game, I think it is something that you could easily dig quite a bit of time into. But I think if you've played things similar, you probably kind of know if it's sort of your jam or not. And that's why I said if you do enjoy something like Factorio or similar style games where you kind of have to optimize your builds and kind of make everything more efficient, it is certainly a pretty cool game on that side of it because I think it also looks very beautiful compared to some of the ones I've previously seen because I do think it looks a lot nicer than something like Factorio. Um, just because I certainly enjoy the space theme stuff a lot more. But that is the third game on this list. Then my last game on this list, I will say this is probably my most played genre out of new games that were coming out in the demo form. And this is going to be more on your roguelite style game. And and I will say that the main reason I probably chose this one over many of the others is because of the sheer amount of choices and options that you have. I will say that there were quite a few that I actually do find memorable, and I could probably make my own separate list of just those that, for different reasons, some of them were pretty good, some of them were a little bit worse. It really kind of varied game to game. Um, but I want to say this one shines a little bit more because of the amount of customization is uh, quite a bit, compared to what I was used to running into so far within this genre. So, for example, you kind of start out with your builder here. Now, your builder can certainly give you quite a bit of different options by itself. So, normally, with most games like this, you have different classes, and those classes do give you a little bit different of a play style. But they're not so uniquely different that it almost feels like a completely different game. And I think this is kind of where that shines in that way. So if I play, like, say, the Mechabot, the one here on the left, it's going to basically kind of give you like this big robot that you could run around and smash things with. Then your build bot's the second one, which becomes more like a tower defense game where you're kind of like dropping towers on the ground, and then those basically are your defense. But you as a builder are extremely vulnerable because once your shields come down, then your entire base is going to be completely obliterated. So it becomes a separate kind of thing where you're trying to make your base really strong, but you as a bot is not compared to the mech bot, which in itself is strong, but it has no permanent location. You just run around the map and you are your base. And then Majibot, you could potentially make multiple bases, which I haven't tried yet, but it's not like a singular location, but you could technically build secondary bases and third bases and fourth bases. And each of those bases could very well be its own little separate, you know, combat on there. Because every time you drop a shield, it puts up like a little wall, and as long as things are built within the wall, you're safe. Yeah. And then the convoy bot, instead of building like towers like you would in a tower defense game, you're kind of doing more like building more vehicles that basically travel with you, and those provide those abilities. So you become like a little mobile army um, that you're fighting with, rather than being either a base building, multiple base building, or a singular bot that has all turrets built onto it. Like for example, in this particular run, um, I was running the mecha bot on this one, which is basically just a singular robot. He can run around and smash things by just stepping on them. So if he runs into something, he would just automatically destroy it. And with that, you can pretty much use yourself as a means of also destroying things. But at the same time, you're also just adding new turns to your character itself. And then you kind of run around with your character to actually do the damage and stuff that you need to. Um, and then as you progress through the game, you get to pick these things like called blueprints. And what these blueprints do, well, basically what they do is they give you different weapons that you could choose to add to your bot in this case. So the mech bot could get rocket launchers, which is kind of like an AoE blast, and it has a much longer range. Shotgun, it's not super accurate, but it just sprays out a bunch of bullets. So it just tends to hit a bunch of stuff all at once. And then the machine gun turret, which is very fast, mid accuracy, but low range. So it just releases a bunch of shots, but it's not always the most accurate as far as guns go. And then with these, you could then purchase the sort of blueprints that you put on it, which in this case I can have up to 4 blueprints. And I already had 2 selected previously on this particular one. So it does give a bit of customization, and there is a little bit of random effect, but because I had rerolls on it, it does give me the ability to hopefully reroll into something that would be more beneficial for it. And you also get these picks as well. These kind of also add another layer of customization. So for example, the top row is kind of like very specific effects. So like you could get like 3,000 gold and 3,000 ore, or sorry, scraps. Scraps are what you basically use to build new turrets, whereas gold is something you can do to improve your part of the roguelite part of the game itself, where you can kind of go in and make your abilities stronger. Or, for example, you can increase all scraps collected for the rest of this particular round. You can also make your shield stronger. You can increase your speed. The bottom row, you can add more piercing, so it'll pierce through more enemies. So it wouldn't just stop at the first thing you hit, but it might hit the first enemy and then go through to the second or third, depending on how many you have of those. Ultimate laser turrets. Sometimes you can get special attacks, and those have their own kind of parameters as far as how those work. And the various boost. So in this case, the ultimate power boost basically just adds damage to all of your different turns that you have. And then I think there's another one for area control. Sorry, area effect. So for example, if you're using blast type things, it could also increase the radius of some of those like AoE things. But about every, I don't know, 8 to 10 waves or so, I think. I don't remember the exact number, but there's like a certain time frame that every so often they'll come up. And as long as you can defeat the boss, you get like a selection from this. So you do get them fairly frequently. Um, and this kind of helps you customize things a little bit further because maybe um, you can already hit a bunch of stuff, so maybe increasing damage helps a bit. Maybe you're running the AoE build and you want the blast to be a lot bigger, so maybe I might grab a lot of that. Maybe I just want a bunch of the special weapons. Maybe I get an ultimate laser turret and then later get a wind cutter. And then you could just keep tacking on all the random weapons like that and see where that goes as well. So with that, it does add a lot of flexibility. You kind of practice with different setups and kind of see which ones work better than others. But I know they are constantly making changes to this game, so um, what might work currently may not work in the near future. Kind of depends on what they do with the updates as they go as to how that'll all work later. But it is fun because it does allow you to try to see if you can optimize things a little bit better and make things a little more efficient for you as well. And then the last thing I'm going to go over on this particular game is this is also another way to kind of customize your specific build. So if you want to make sure that like your shotguns do really good damage, this is a way to kind of make them start off being a lot stronger. And I feel in a lot of ways this is kind of your bread and butter of making the customization that you want. Because you can basically go in here and you can tweak certain weapons to make them a little bit better and kind of do things more effectively than if you didn't get any kind of improvement on it. In some cases, this could decrease the cost of getting more of those turrets. So let's say if you want to run shotgun, for example, then you could probably get something in here that might reduce the cost of shotguns by 35%. So every time you purchase one, it would be a lot cheaper than, um, a lot of the similar turns that you did not get any kind of upgrade to. You can also increase their base damage, and this is done via getting plus levels to those turns. If I get like a shotgun that has plus 5 levels, it means it's going to do a certain amount of damage beyond what it would have otherwise done at that particular level. So this does give you a significant amount of flexibility. I think this is kind of where the game also makes it shine. It's not just picking a singular class and that class does stuff. You kind of pick your class, which can go in one of four very, very different directions. And you pick these cards, and these cards then can go, what do you actually want to be good at? And then those cards can kind of help you mold your character into what you want it to be. And then after you start playing, then it becomes sort of a matter of taking the things that you already put into it and seeing if that mold works. And then at that point, see if you can kind of make high enough of a level, to maybe hit the high scoreboard or something along those lines. But that is my top 4 list. These are different games that, as I said, have probably not come out yet because I haven't checked some of them if maybe the time frames got pushed up. But they are certainly the highlights of the different games that I have played so far because I do play quite a few that I don't make videos on, and sometimes I won't make the video on it just on the grounds that I feel that the game might have been bad or really not up to where I want to necessarily try to promote something that I don't genuinely personally enjoy myself. Because if I don't enjoy it, I'd rather not sit there and make a bunch of videos on it as well. But otherwise, if I do end up enjoying it, I'll kind of play through it a little bit. I kind of then ask myself, does this game seem like it has some potential? And if it does, then that's usually when I go through and make stuff. And on some of these games, I do revisit quite a bit. Like this one and Final Factor, I've played quite a bit. Darfall I haven't revisited a little bit. I was probably going to give it a little bit of time for it to do a few more updates on it and give it a test run again pretty soon. And then Galaxy Highways, I think, is currently set to a specific storyline. So until they add more to the storyline, it's hard to say whether or not that will be added during the demo or not, or if they'll just keep building off of that. But that is my list of videos for the time being. As I said, this is pretty much covered in the last few months, so I'll probably make another one in maybe 4 to 5 months, depending on when I feel that I can make another small list as far as games that I feel have shined through out of all the different ones I have been playing. Otherwise, thank you for watching Rundlii Gaming. You all have a wonderful day.